Professor Leonard Swidler of the Department of Religion at Temple University will talk to us about constitutions for the Catholic Church. Professor Swidler, since the Catholic Church has a pope, it doesn't need a constitution, correct?
Actually, Charles, that's exactly wrong. One of the recent popes, namely Pope Paul VI, said that the Catholic Church does need a constitution. He said this in 1965 toward the end of the Second Vatican Council. And he didn't just talk. He set up then a commission whose responsibility was to begin the process of drafting such a constitution. They came up with a Latin name very quickly to describe their project. It was called Lex Fundamentalis Ecclesiae. Very simple. Lex means law, fundamentalis, obviously, fundamental or basic, ecclesiae of the church, what we in America call a constitution. This commission for the Lex Fundamentalis Ecclesiae, or Constitution of the Catholic Church, met a number of times, had a very large number of experts who were members of it, and they met for over 17 years, produced various versions, each time improving them by sending them out to various experts for feedback, to bishops, and eventually to various lay people around the world. As I said, it went on for until 1978, which is when Pope John Paul II was elected. Very shortly after he took office, he dismissed the commission which was supposed to work on this constitution for the Catholic Church. So that task of establishing a constitution for the Catholic Church is one that is left up to Catholics since that time, namely you and me.
Why would a constitution be important for the Church?
Well, it seems to me we have to remember that the world today is vastly different than it was in the past. Certainly is vastly different than when the Catholic Church was set up with the structure that it has today. The structure we have today fundamentally was established in the 4th century when Constantine, in effect, made the Catholic Church, he took it out of the catacombs and made it effectively an arm of the Roman Empire. All of the terms that we have, parish, diocese, and pontifex, all of these terms are terms from the Roman Empire. But the Roman Empire doesn't exist anymore. We exist in a world today which is very much a world of democracy, or people who want democracy. Here in the United States for over 200 years we've been blessed with having democracy, one that hopefully improves with time. And the rest of the world either has gained democracy or desperately wants it. We in the Catholic Church also need to have a democracy if we're going to speak effectively to today's world, not yesterday's world.
Would you envision a constitution only at the universal level?
This, of course, is what Pope Paul VI started out with. But if you think about it, if you're going to have a constitution on the universal level, on the international, global level, obviously you've got to have similar kinds of structures beneath it. You can't have it, as it were, a democracy on the top with rights and responsibilities and no rights and responsibilities below it. That would be absolutely impossible. So implicit in the command for us establishing a constitution for the Catholic Church on the universal level is also the command that we need to have constitutions at every level of the church, starting at the grassroots level, which we would call the parish.
Why is it important to have a written constitution?
Well, it's absolutely essential to have a written constitution because if we only have words, Words are very easily misremembered. People remember them very differently. I once was in a long-term dialogue as a member of the Catholic Presbyterian dialogue team with the stated clerk of the Presbyterian Church. I was very impressed with how he conducted that session, and he remarked something that I thought was very important. He said whenever he went to an important meeting, he always volunteered to be the secretary of that meeting. Why? Because what he wrote as secretary, that is what happened at that meeting. 6 months later, 6 years later, nobody remembered clearly what happened. What he wrote that is remembered. That's why a written constitution is absolutely necessary.
Is there any history of a constitution in the American Catholic Church?
Yes, there certainly is. Our very first bishop in the United States, John Carroll, developed a constitution. In fact, he, as we know, was elected by all of the priests in the United States at that time to be the first bishop. Rome wanted to appoint a bishop, and they said, no, we want to elect, and Rome said, fine. In fact, the next two bishops were also elected. And there was this constitution, but most splendidly, Bishop John England, who was Bishop of Charleston, South Carolina. That was his diocesan seat. He was the Bishop of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. A very huge area, but a small number of Catholics in those days. He was bishop from 1820 to 1842. He very quickly set up a constitution which had representatives from every parish in the diocese. Every parish also had democratically elected representatives on the parish council, or its equivalent, the vestry. Every year there was a meeting of representatives from the whole diocese to which the bishop was required by the constitution that he set up to give a report, to give an account. And every parish in the diocese had to first ratify and accept the constitution. It was a very democratic structure, and it worked marvelously. Unfortunately, we had a reaction on the part of a series of bishops subsequently. We had a huge influx of very uneducated Catholics in the huge immigration in the middle of the 19th century, and all of that great constitutionality was washed away in history. Now the Pope is calling for us to reestablish it.
How would a constitution for the American Catholic Church be brought about?
Well, the short answer, unfortunately, is with great difficulty. The reason is that most of us Catholics, practically most of you sitting there or standing there watching this, think a constitution for the Catholic Church is something that's impossible. Well, of course it isn't. I just tried to indicate that. It's in our history. And that means that we have got to educate ourselves and all of our fellow Catholics. That's the first step to take. And we have to make ourselves responsible in our parishes, and then slowly we can persuade the laity, and of course we'd have to have the pastor agree as well that we are going to now pull together a committee representing the whole parish and draft a constitution for ourselves. There are many documents that are available, many examples that are available that people can use, but it has to be your constitution, my constitution, not somebody else's constitution. For an example of the Constitution, you can go to the website of the Association for the Rights of Catholics in the Church, arcc-catholic-rights.net.